Were you defiant as a child? Or do you maybe have a child who's rebellious? How did your parents respond to your behavior, or how are you responding to your own defiant youngster? I was a very rebellious child, and my father's responses were often abusive. We were entangled in an angry web, but in the end, we forgave each other and found our way toward loving reconciliation. My guest today is an expert on family estrangement, its causes, and the paths that are available to us for moving toward forgiveness. Hi, this is Marlena Fiol from Becoming Who We Truly Are, a YouTube channel that deepens our understanding of who we are, but also what's possible for us. If you find value in this video, please give it a thumbs up or click the subscribe button on your screen. It makes a big difference. Before introducing today's guest, who will talk a lot about becoming all we can be, I invite you to check out two books I've published about two very imperfect people stumbling toward becoming their best and truest selves. My memoir, Nothing Bad Between Us, and our new historical novel, Called. The web addresses are in the show notes below. Now, I am so pleased to introduce today's guest, Dr. Joshua Coleman. Josh is a psychologist in private practice in San Francisco. He's a senior fellow with the Council on Contemporary Families, which is an organization of leading sociologists, historians, psychologists, and demographers who provide research and best practice findings about American families. He's lectured at esteemed universities around the world, and he's been interviewed on major television and radio shows. Josh is the author of numerous books. His latest book is Rules of Estrangement: Why Adult Children Cut Ties and How to Heal the Conflict. The book that I drew most of my questions from today is When Parents Hurt: Compassionate Strategies When You and Your Grown Child Don't Get Along. At the end of this interview, we'll provide additional recommendations of informative programs on parent-child relations. Josh, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
You and others have written about major cultural shifts over time that have contributed to these family dynamics that we see today. Will you comment on some of these culture shifts and how they've impacted families?
Sure. I mean, one of the biggest cultural shifts has been the way that the individual has become sort of disembedded from the family and disembedded from the institutions that governed and animated family life really throughout millennia. It used to be the child's job to earn the parents' love and respect, and increasingly these days it's the parents' job to earn that of the child's, or to earn the child's love and respect. And a lot of parents don't assume that they're going to have it.
Are there class or gender differences that impact the probability or the nature of family estrangement?
Well, I mean, my research, I did a survey of 1,600 estranged parents, and the majority of them are in the middle to upper classes. And so I think there may be ways that middle and upper class parents are so preoccupied with developing the choice of the voice of their child, their individuality, their social capital, this idea that anyone or anything stand in the way of your happiness and your growth can later redound to the parent, where the adult child feels like, well, it's your fault that, I have some of these issues that I have, or I don't like how you talk to me or treat me, so I'm getting rid of you. Adult children saying things like, oh, best thing I ever did, I'm so much happier now, no more drama, happier since I went no contact. And for the parent, there's no upside. For the adult child, it's tied to a narrative of liberation from oppressive figures, of pursuit of happiness, of strength, autonomy. For the parent, it's all downside. It's failing at life's most important task. It's being cut off from your most important members. It's losing contact with children, with grandchildren. So there is a very big generational divide of the meaning and the impact of estrangement.
So, Josh, you've said that the reasons people give for estrangement often are not egregious enough to justify what you call the nuclear option. Would you say more about that?
Well, I mean, enough is clearly in the eye of the beholder. The idea is that in the past 3 decades, there's been an enormous expansion between what's considered traumatizing, abusive, neglectful, or harmful behavior. So a lot of what adult children today are considering abusive in the parents' generation might have been considered obnoxious, controlling, manipulative,
Right.
negative, etc. But no parent would have called it abuse. Heartening statistics about the democratization of the family and the more sensitive kind of parenting that we've been doing, especially in the past 3 decades, but really in the past half century, has led to more closeness. The majority of parents and adult children are closer than parents have been in prior generation. That if the parent is able to take responsibility and make amends and empathize, that can cause the adult child to feel much more open to that. Some acts are simply unforgivable, period. What are your thoughts about that? Yeah. In whose eyes is it unforgivable? It's really in the eyes of the person who's going to do the forgiving about whether it's sort of worth it to them. All forgiveness is really self-forgiveness. Do you agree with this? I hadn't heard it put like that, but I like it because I think part of what we're doing when we're not forgiving is protecting ourselves. And if you're protecting yourself, you can make the argument that you're doing it from a position of empowerment. But I would also argue that and I could make that argument, but I would also argue that you're doing it from a position of victimization. You're still holding onto the idea that that person can really still hurt you. Part of what we're defending against is our own feeling that maybe that person was right to abuse us. Maybe we really did deserve to be hurt. And so we have to keep them at a distance to keep that reality at a distance. Yeah. So I think to his point, the more that we can kind of forgive those who have hurt us, it actually can create more resilience in us, paradoxically. You draw an important distinction between self-compassion and self-pity. Can you say a bit about that? Well, self-compassion is really self-pity is sort of not really taking responsibility, and I don't think you can really feel self-compassion until it's kind of what we were talking about forgiveness. You actually have to face your own and take responsibility for the ways that you did hurt your child, or at least acknowledge the ways that they feel that you hurt them and accept that that's a possibility. This goes to the concept of separate realities. We can, as parents, feel like we did a great job raising our children, and our children can credibly feel like we missed something important that they really wish that we had done differently. And it's very useful to not get into the rightness or the wrongness of it, but just to sort of seek to understand, because that's a space where a potential reconciliation is going to occur. When we miss the chance for real reconciliation, we miss the chance to heal. Do you believe that's true? I do, and that's the kind of society that I would like to live in, where, I think we've become so preoccupied with happiness and individuality that we've lost sight of the importance of connection. Does it always need to be hashed out? What are the conditions under which forgiveness and reconciliation can emerge organically with a lot of explicit verbalizing and talking about it? Oh, that's a great question. No, it doesn't always need to be hashed out. And frankly, a lot of the adult children that do reconcile with their parents, statistically, I don't know. It's probably not the majority. I think the majority who reconcile do so because the parent has reached out and made amends. But a not insignificant number reconcile and don't want to talk about it for a variety of reasons, either because they don't necessarily want to be burdened by how hurt the parent was or that kind of thing. They may not trust the parent to be able to get in and out of the conversation without hurting them. They may not fully understand the reason that they estranged themselves. They may be embarrassed if they were estranged as a result kind of complying with the person that they're married to, which is a not infrequent cause of estrangement, when a son-in-law or daughter-in-law causes the estrangement. So no, I don't think that everything has to be hashed out. I think that things can happen organically. But to your question, what would be the conditions that would cause that to happen? I would think, a certain amount of growth on both people's part, probably an ability on one or both people's part to stop doing the things that are particularly provocative to the other.
You're very clear and very straightforward that it's primarily the parents' responsibility to take the lead in moving toward reconciliation with their adult children. I think your words are, the buck stops with you, the parents.
Yeah.
Why isn't it equally everyone's responsibility to build bridges in broken family relationships, especially when everyone's an adult?
Well, I wish that it were, but it's not, for two reasons. One is that adult children just aren't as invested in their parents' happiness, at least in our culture. They are in other culture, particularly Asian societies. But in the U.S., adult children just aren't as invested, in part because because of the ways that families have shifted. It's the parent. The parent is the one who brought the child into life. We are always parents until we die. In fact, we're parents after we die because we continue to have an influence on our children. I do feel like it is incumbent on parents to take the high road and to acknowledge that you are kind of a parent forever, and that does make it incumbent on you to show leadership around and that kind of thing.
Josh, you write that sometimes we have to accept that hope is a bad idea.
Right.
Can you provide some guidance as to when it's wise to let go of hope?
Radical acceptance is saying it is what it is. If you've done all the things that I recommend parents do, like write amends, take responsibility, show a certain degree of commitment to reconciling for a period of time, a couple of years or so, unless your child is a minor. If your child's a minor, you should keep trying and until they're into adulthood. But if you've done all those things and nothing has worked, then you're better off just accepting that it is what it is, and there may not be anything else that you can do. Because the more that we white knuckle it in life, the more we suffer. There's a wonderful quote by Marsha Linehan, again, the founder of dialectical behavior therapy, where she says, the path out of hell is through misery. And the more that we fight our misery, the more that we stay in hell. The more that we kind of resist where we are right now, the more that we actually intensify our suffering. So to get back to your question about what's problematic about hope, well, hope is problematic if it's causing you to white knuckle your life, to kind of feel like I'm really hoping that my kid reconciles with me, otherwise I can't have a meaningful life. That's wrong-headed. It's okay to have one foot in hope, but you need to have the other foot clearly planted in radical acceptance.
Josh, if there were one last thing you'd like our listeners to hear, what would that be?
I think the thing that I want parents to have the most is to work on self-compassion and self-forgiveness.
If you've found value in this program, please do give it that thumbs up or press the subscribe button. It really makes a big difference. And if you'd like to listen to my full hour-long interview with Dr. Coleman, the web address is in the show notes below. In addition, just so you know, I'll be posting a new episode of this YouTube channel each Tuesday at 6 a.m. Eastern Time. Also, please post any questions or comments you might have for me. I am interested, and I will respond promptly. For example, have you, or maybe someone you know, experienced estrangement from an adult child? What has that experience taught you? For those of you who are deeply engaged in your own path to becoming who you truly are, I just want to tell you that my path may not be the right one for you. I'm sharing ways that I have moved forward toward increasing peace, but naturally only you know what path best fits your needs. For further information on parent-child relations, we recommend the following resources. First, a TED presentation by Julie Lythcott-Hames on how to raise successful kids without overparenting. Also, a Psych2Go video presenting 8 ways to improve parent-child relationships. And again, for a deeper look into my own experiences with failed and successful family relationships, we recommend my recently published memoir, Nothing Bad Between Us, as well as our new historical novel, Called. The release date is November 2, 2021. The web addresses of each of these are in the show notes. And remember, we are together on this journey.